Gwyn Shotwell just led SpaceX to 167 launches this year. That's more than Russia, China, and Europe combined. Forbes ranked her number 20 on their most powerful women list, right above Taylor Swift. But while everyone's watching Falcon 9 break records, something bigger just happened behind the scenes. NASA quietly ordered Starshield terminals for their deep space network, a government-only encrypted system most people don't even know exists. Why would NASA suddenly need SpaceX's most secretive satellite network? Let's dive right in. Here's who Gwyn Shotwell really is, and why her rise matters more than you think. Back in 2002, when SpaceX was just 70 employees working out of a warehouse, Shotwell joined as VP of Business Development. Most people thought private spaceflight was a pipe dream. She didn't. Over the next 2 decades, she built the Falcon launch manifest to over 70 missions worth more than $10 billion. That's not just sales. That's transforming an industry that had been controlled by governments for half a century. Before SpaceX, Shotwell spent over a decade at Aerospace Corporation as chief engineer for satellite programs and led the FAA's landmark study on commercial space transportation. She wasn't just another executive hire. She brought the credibility SpaceX desperately needed when no one took them seriously. And here's the part most people miss. While Musk dreams in Mars timelines, Shotwell translates those visions into actual hardware, actual contracts, actual launches. That balance is exactly why SpaceX succeeds where others fail. So when she posted, "We hit our target this month," it meant something specific. SpaceX originally aimed for 175 to 180 Falcon 9 launches in 2025. By summer, they revised that to 165 based on what VP of Launch Kiko Doni called business and operational needs. Translation: they're managing resources strategically, not just chasing numbers. They hit 165 and have 2 more launches before year's end, 167 total. That's 33 more than their 2024 record of 134. But here's what that number really represents. 5 years ago in 2020, SpaceX flew 25 missions, about 2 per month. Now they're launching every 2 to 3 days. Think about the infrastructure that requires. Second stages rolling off production lines every 2.5 days. Recovery ships positioned across oceans. Ground crews working around the clock. That's not innovation. That's industrial revolution in space. And Doni dropped another detail that signals where things are heading. Starlink 699 was the last single-stick Falcon 9 launch from LC-39A for a while. Why? Because SpaceX is shifting that pad toward Falcon-heavy missions and ramping up Starship operations from the Cape. They're not just maintaining current operations, they're already transitioning to what comes next. Which brings us to Starship, the program that's either going to revolutionize spaceflight or become the most expensive learning experience in aerospace history. 2025 was supposed to be Starship's breakout year, with up to 25 launches planned. Reality delivered 5 flights instead, but those 5 flights told a complicated story. The year started rough. Flight 7 on January 16th successfully caught the Super Heavy booster, an incredible milestone, but lost the upper stage to engine vibrations during ascent. Flight 8 on March 6th, same pattern. Booster caught perfectly, ship broke up near the end of its burn with debris scattered over the Caribbean. Flight 9 on May 27th marked the first booster reuse, but the upper stage lost control during coast phase. 3 consecutive upper stage failures. That's not a fluke. That's a design problem. The Block 2 upper stage clearly wasn't ready, and SpaceX had to figure out why, while the world watched every explosion in real time. Then came the June ground explosion with Ship 36, which delayed everything further. But here's where SpaceX's culture shows its strength. Most aerospace companies would have spent a year analyzing, forming committees, writing reports. SpaceX analyzed, fixed, and flew again in 2 months. Flight 10 on August 26 changed everything. The upper stage completed its full mission profile, deployed mock Starlink satellites, relit engines in space, survived re-entry with heat shield testing, and made a controlled splashdown in the Indian Ocean. Not just survival, execution. Flight 11 on October 13th built on that success. Another reflown booster, another soft splashdown. But the upper stage did something remarkable. It flew with missing heat shield tiles intentionally to test margins. That's confidence. That's data collection at scale. And it worked. So what did 2025 really prove? That booster reuse and tower catches are now routine, that upper stage challenges are solvable, that the path to full reusability is visible even if not yet achieved. SpaceX ended the year with environmental approval for Starship launches from Florida's SLC-37, expanding their operational flexibility. Now here's where things get interesting for the business model. Once Starship becomes fully operational, SpaceX plans to shift most Starlink missions from Falcon 9 to Starship. Does that mean Falcon 9 becomes obsolete? Eventually, yes, but that's exactly how progress works. When something 10 times better arrives, the second best option retires. Falcon 9 had its era. Starship's era is beginning. The implications stretch far beyond Starlink. For Mars missions, full reusability could enable regular cargo and crew rotations instead of one-off expeditions. Musk's vision of Mars colonization requires sustained logistics. Think supply chains, not stunts. Starship's 100-ton payload capacity to Mars makes that theoretically possible for the first time. But theory and reality remain separated by some serious challenges. On-orbit refueling at the scale Starship requires hasn't been demonstrated. Rapid turnaround and full heat shield reuse are still aspirational. The technology exists on paper. Making it work reliably is the hard part. Which brings us to Starshield, the program SpaceX rarely discusses publicly. While Starlink serves commercial customers, Starshield targets national security and government clients with higher encryption standards and classified capabilities. Most people don't even know it exists. NASA just made it impossible to ignore. On December 11th, NASA filed procurement documents revealing plans for a sole source contract with SpaceX for Starshield terminals and data services. The scope: 7 terminals installed across NASA's 3 deep space network sites in Australia, California, and Spain. 8 data subscriptions, each handling 5 terabytes monthly through continuous government-only encrypted service. This isn't a casual experiment. This is NASA planning to route deep space network traffic through SpaceX satellites. The DSN is how we communicate with Voyager, Perseverance, and every spacecraft exploring beyond Earth orbit. It's critical infrastructure that's increasingly strained by growing demand and aging hardware. When a 70-meter antenna in California went down earlier this year, mission operations felt the impact immediately. NASA's solution? Add redundancy through Starshield rather than relying solely on terrestrial fiber connections between DSN sites. The 6-month pilot program run by NASA's Space Communications and Navigation Program will test whether space-based backup can provide the resiliency they need. What makes Starshield different from regular Starlink? Encryption levels designed for classified payloads. AES-128 or better cryptography. Protection for export-controlled data. This is communications infrastructure built to government security standards from the ground up. And here's the part that should make everyone pay attention. NASA hasn't previously discussed using Starshield for DSN operations. They've been working with SpaceX on optical relay networks using regular Starlink satellites for Earth orbit communications. That's public knowledge. But routing deep space network traffic through Starshield? That's new. That's significant. If this pilot succeeds, we're looking at the first integration of SpaceX's most secure satellite network into NASA's deep space communications backbone. Not as a supplement, as core infrastructure. That level of trust and dependency represents a fundamental shift in how government space operations might work going forward. So what's the real story here? It's not just about launch numbers or new satellites. It's about a fundamental shift in who controls access to space and how that infrastructure gets built. Gwyn Shotwell proved that 167 launches in a single year isn't luck. It's execution. While others are still trying to make reusability work, SpaceX is already planning to phase out the rocket that achieved it. That's not arrogance. That's confidence in what's coming next. And NASA's Starshield contract reveals something deeper. When the agency responsible for deep space exploration trusts a private company's encrypted satellite network to back up their most critical communications infrastructure, That's not just a pilot program. That's validation, the kind of trust that takes decades to earn and changes how space operations work permanently. We're watching the transition happen in real time. Falcon 9 dominated this decade. Starship will define the next. And somewhere between launch pads in Texas and encrypted terminals in Australia, the future of spaceflight is being built by teams most people will never hear about, led by executives who don't chase headlines. That's the story worth paying attention to. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit that like button and subscribe to Space Update 24 Hours. We're covering the space industry developments that actually matter, not just the ones that trend. Drop a comment below. Do you think Starshield will become standard for government space communications? Or is this just the beginning of something bigger? Share this with anyone who still thinks SpaceX is just about one person. The real power is in the team making it happen. Jared Isaacman just became NASA's new administrator. Days in, he's defending Starship while exposing serious problems with SLS and Orion. Why would NASA's own boss attack programs the agency spent over $50 billion on? Someone claimed SLS and Orion work. Starship is the holdup. Isaacman fired back with brutal facts: heat shield failures, booster explosions, 20+ years with no human flights. What does he know that everyone missed? Let's dive right in. Here's the thing most people don't realize about Jared Isaacman. This isn't just some political appointee who got the job through connections. He dropped out of high school at 16, built a payment processing empire called Shift4 from nothing, became a billionaire, then commanded 2 civilian space missions, Inspiration 4 in 2021 and Polaris Dawn in 2024, where he performed the first ever commercial spacewalk. On December 17, 2025, the Senate confirmed him 67-30 as NASA's 15th administrator. That vote margin tells you something. Even Democrats who grilled him couldn't deny his qualifications. But here's where it gets interesting. After the confirmation, congratulations poured in from Lockheed Martin, Blue Origin, Vast Space, practically